I'm Monica Huntsberry. I'm a host and advisor for Revel 11. Revel 11 is an amazing community of women who love to have edgy and important conversations as we work together to change the world. And it's a delight for me this morning to host Magdalena Garcia. Hello, Magdalena.
Hey, Monica, and everyone here.
We're so excited to hear from you today, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit about Magdalena. She's a mother, a storyteller, an educator, creator, and ceremony leader. I think we need more of that in today's world. For the last 25 years, she has led families through trauma-informed social justice approach that puts respectful, deep listening at the heart, mind, and body at the core. Understanding the unique power of ceremony for healing, she creates opportunities for embodied storytelling with adults and children as they navigate the big and small thresholds of their lives. Oh, what a beautiful description. And I know you have so much beautiful wisdom to share today. We may or may not get to all of it, but again, we have an intimate audience. The session is being recorded, but the comments in the chat are always private, so please know that. We welcome your comments and questions as Magdalena shares more about her journey and her purpose today. So Magdalena, let's kick it off with talking a little bit about you and your intention for this morning's session.
Well, I just want to take a moment and just breathe in all the beautiful, incredible people that I love who are here, people who I don't yet know, who I will come to love in some way. Thank you for joining this Saturday morning. And my intention for today, really in settling in, first of all, I want to acknowledge that I'm calling in and to you from ancestral and unceded land of the Gabrielino Tongva people, and I thank them for their caretaking of this land. And I'm here today with ancestors, with intergenerational celebration and intergenerational trauma around motherhood. So I want to honor my mother. I am the daughter of Maria Della, who is the daughter of Carmel, who is the daughter of Firmona. And I want, in their honor, and all of the mothers, your grandmothers, your great-grandmothers, honor what it takes to be a mother and how much it asks of us and gives to us and takes from us. So today we'll talk about what it means to navigate the transitions of parenthood and even what they might be. And then within that, how do we grieve fully and celebrate fiercely our own experiences of being a mother, which then allows us to be able to support our children to celebrate fiercely and grieve fully in their own lives. So I'm glad to be here with you today.
That is such a beautiful intention. And, you know, initially we started this series because I was feeling so much angst about empty nest and the transition of that for me, and wanted to have more conversations with mothers, not just about the big transitions like empty nest, but all of the transitions. And one of the things I really value about your work is that you're surfacing those conversations and helping people acknowledge all sorts of transitions. So tell me a little bit about that work and what you see as it relates to motherhood.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been, for the last 16 years, my daughter is now just about to be 15, but I had several losses before her. Ever since I became a mom, I just knew that there was something so sacred and special to celebrate. And every year there was something that needed grieving. Whether I wanted to acknowledge it or not was always the question, but there was something I was losing as she was gaining, or something as she was losing that I was gaining that was hard to put into words. When I was born, actually, and I've been thinking, like, why am I doing this work? Why does it mean so much to me to talk to mothers about this? When I was born, from the story that I get from my mom, they took me from her and put me in the nursery. And it was a day before she could come and see me. And she kept asking, take me to my baby, take me to my baby. For whatever reason, could not happen in the time frame she was hoping. Were there sociopolitical things happening as a young Latina woman in a hospital? Was her voice not heard? I'm not sure. But when she finally convinced someone to wheel her over, this was in the 70s, right? So wheel her over to the nursery, there was a sign on my bassinet that said, "Don't pick this one up. She cries too much." And that story for my mother is a very painful part of her birth experience. And every year for 45 years, I have heard that story on my birthday. I would never have known that that had happened. It's not even necessarily my grief that to be carried. It's hers. And her grief has now become mine because I see how, because of lack of support, not because of lack of desire, she was not able to ever metabolize that experience. And it's still here with us today. So when I talk to friends and family and mothers, and we talk about parenting, because for 25 years, I've had the opportunity to be on the other side of families, supporting families and children in schools. And I see what's the angst parents might have and how that gets played out in their parenting. Disclaimer, there's no way to avoid it. We're human. I will bring past with me. I will bring all of that in with me as I parent my child. But what I noticed is that when parents had an opportunity to really talk about what was happening for them, how they were struggling with letting go, how they were struggling with noticing what was happening for their child, when they could really say, this is scaring me because it's touching something in me, not just as a protective mama or papa bear, but there's something in here that relates to my own experience. When parents can process that, the world of possibilities and solutions that they can bring to their children opens up, and something different happens in their relationship. And then the child is free to walk forward a little less burdened by their own parents' unresolved stories. And when the child needs to process, so in my case, that little newborn who in the nursery was not picked up, I don't know what lasting effect that may have had. Although from what I understand, my mother said for the next few months, I cried incessantly every afternoon for a few hours. Was that me processing it? Maybe. Because of her unresolved feelings of guilt and neglect that she felt, it was hard for her to shepherd me through my own big feelings around it. So this idea of mothers in particularly deserving to take up space and time for their own processing is something I feel that each person on this call and each person who will be listening deserves. You deserve this. And that little 1-day-old baby in me speaks for the children too. And maybe you as daughters are currently or have carried the stories of your parents, the unresolved pain that they may have not had a person or a place to help them hold. So that's when I think of what brings me to that work and what drives me to do my own internal work and then be able to pass that on to others, is that.
I think it's so poignant, your words and your reflection, and helping bring to light that self-awareness, not with a lens of guilt or shame. Like you said, we're all human, right? And we all have our stories, but helping us think about what is that baton that we're passing on to our children? What is that unresolved story that we've created about our parenting journey. And I think especially at this time when the bar is set so high and there are so many conversations for mothers to just do, right? It's an exceptionally tough time where we either are judging ourselves or feel judged by others. So I'm curious, also for people, if they feel called, to put in the chat, what transitions or journeys in motherhood are bringing them to this conversation today. But I guess, the first question I have for you, Magdalena, is, what happens when we don't slow down and take time to process transitions? Or in general, how do we become more self-aware?
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so I have some visuals, because anyone who knows me knows I love visuals. I love pictures. I love I love all that stuff. So I've got something fancy here we're going to try out. Let's see if we get there. Oh, yeah, look at that. There we are. Okay, so I wanted to begin by introducing you or reintroducing you to this word matrescence. I don't know, have any of you heard of this term? Oh, beautiful. Okay. Well, let's see. So matrescence is a word that was coined by Dana Raphael in the 70s. She was a medical anthropologist who worked with Margaret Mead. And she really was studying what happens to a woman as she becomes a mother. What are the psychological, what are the social, what are the spiritual, what are the biological impacts of that? And she likened it to the idea, the big developmental push of adolescence, where so much is happening, so much is changing within us and around us because of this transition. And that this stage of matrescence is not something that happens immediately or only one time. It is an unfolding process. Aurelia Thon, who is an educator and a psychologist at Columbia University, she has resurfaced the term matrescence and is advancing the field of maternal psychology and really wanting to understand what happens for us. So I'm standing on their shoulders, borrowing their hard work as I think about my own experiences and the experiences of people I've worked with in navigating the emotional transitions of parenthood. And this is kind of a hard picture maybe to see, but I was in Pasadena the other day. Shout out to my Pasadena ladies over there. And it was a directory in a plaza, and I was trying to figure out where I was going to go. And I was standing on one side of this directory looking at it, and it was very clear. Okay, go from here to there, right? And that kind of felt like parenthood, like the dream, the fantasy of parenthood. Before you begin, you're like, I know this is going to be. I'm going to have 2.5 children. I'm going to have a dog. I'm going to have an SUV, maybe. I'm going to live in a white picket fence, right? The sort of the American dream, if you will. And then things maybe start to happen, and so I was sort of looking at this, and when I walked around to the other side, this is the side that was towards the sun. This to me is actually a much more accurate representation of what motherhood looks like and parenting. I see Sid laughing. So I don't know if that resonates for you, but it's off. All bets are off. And maybe all bets are off the moment the baby comes out. There may be different things happening for you or your child as a result of birth. It may not happen for 5 years. It may not happen for 15, and then something happens. But I think this is a more accurate representation. And we don't always talk about this. We don't talk about the fact that the map is messed up and we don't know how to get from point A to point B anymore. And a lot of those times for me happen at transition points when my child is growing in some way. And these transition points can be times where it's coming. I know graduation is coming. I can see it and it's looming in the distance. Waterfalls are amazing, but they're also big and noisy and powerful. And I'm not sure what's going to happen at the end. They can also be things that kind of catch us by surprise, sort of that shark in the water. That's us as a parent bopping along in our boat, thinking all is good. And there's something lurking, something comes, some transition in our child's life, and it floors us. Could also be a transition. This is a picture of the Twin Towers Memorial in New York City. That it could be one of those transitions in your child's life that is full of mourning, that feels hard to acknowledge, because maybe if we truly acknowledge it, we may fall in and not ever come out the other side. Do any of those resonate with you? Any of those images of parenthood? Yeah, I saw you nodding your head, Susan and Libby. Yeah.
And Magdalena, as you think about acknowledging and having conversations about both grief and celebration, what have you uncovered in that work?
Yeah, well, I've based on the matrescence work, I've been thinking about this path, this path of parenthood, and what are the opportunities that we can take for celebration and for honoring of grief. So I'm not sure if you can't read all of this, don't worry. I have this as a special gift. If you'd like, after our time together, you can, yeah.
We'll send this in follow up with the summary. Yeah, we got it.
How is it that you get this? Yes, you will have this if you're interested. But this idea that there are places along the line where there's a transition happening. So things like menarche, when our girl children get their first period, that can be a really big deal for us as women, right? Conception, losses, choice, whether or not to conceive, fertility challenges. And then we think about baby showers, and usually places where there's lots and lots of celebration opportunity. There can also be lots of superficiality in it as well, right? You go to a baby shower and it was like, oh, wow, well, we played the game where we don't cross our legs, and we got the clothespins. I personally love that game, and I'm a shark at it. And I also really love when the story beneath the story has a chance to be heard. And a lot of times the grandmother's in the room, the new grandmother in the room, needs some support with what this means, this transition into this new role of being a grandmother. And previous losses for anyone in the room can be very present. And what I've found is that if we don't give those stories of loss at these celebration times a place to be heard, they're there anyways. They're like the shadows lurking in the corner. Right? There was a bridal shower I got a chance to do with a family, and the mother of the bride had an opportunity to share with me how excited she was for her child. And it reminded her how she didn't get anything like this when it was her turn 50 years ago. That's in the room with us. That's weighing this person down and being transmitted in some way to the children. So we had an opportunity. She had her own bridal shower in a way at the event that it was announced. This past is here. And in some wisdom traditions, they believe there is no future. We can't talk about a future. We can only talk about now and the past. So if we don't take care of the stuff that's back there, it's that ancestral stuff here, it will continue to grow and manifest in ways that we may not want it to.
And interesting on that point, because I think it is really easy for us culturally to celebrate, right? We know what the milestones are and the showers and events and celebrations. And it's not as easy for us to gather around pain. Yes, if someone you love passes, there is sometimes a funeral, not always, or some celebration of life or whatever that might be. But we want to anchor in things that are positive, not in things that create memories of pain. So how do you balance that, especially at a time when somebody is celebrating? And what is that journey like?
Yeah, it's true. We are very afraid of death. And grief is part of that. And for any of you who have been have grieved recently or in your past, a very true grief of losing someone, it can feel like that fountain at the 9/11 memorial. It is that is the visceral feeling of loss, right? The never ending going down, down, down. And we're not necessarily sure we're going to come out the other side. And that's because I think so many of us have not had appropriate support in being in that grief place and letting grief do its work with us and doing the work of grief with some bodies around us who will hold us as we go there. The opposite of that, which is what we've been taught, is hold it in, don't let it out, because you're going to frighten other people. Other people won't know how to hold you, and it's not appropriate or safe to do that. So we hold it, but it doesn't go away, right? It just turns into some other things. So when I've had the opportunity and the great privilege to work with families in their celebrations and in my own celebrations, we just very gently acknowledge that there is loss in the room, that there is something here that wants to be acknowledged so that we can feel the celebration even deeper.
I love that. So it's about finding space to hold all of it in order to celebrate fully.
Yes. And that's the grieving fully and the celebrating fiercely. That those words came to me at some point, like, what am I trying to do? Every year for my daughter's birthday, I just felt this insatiable need to celebrate her birthday, but to celebrate my birthing day as well. The day that I came out, the day I was born. And based on the previous losses that I had, based on my mother's experience of motherhood, I knew that each year I needed to do something more than goodie bags and cake. It had to be more. But it felt really weird because, like, why is this about me? What is wrong with you? Like, this is about your kid. Like, no, I need people to sit with me and hold this. And when I could say, this year was really hard for me because my child now has friends that she likes to hang out more with than me, that could be said very gently. And I wasn't asking my child to hold it for me because I created this container filled with other people, filled with music. We always would play some kind of celebration song, something to move us through after moving into a deeper place of, like, wow, what does it mean to be a teen? What does this really mean? It's kind of painful when I think about myself as a teen. And, oh my gosh, look at these teens here in this room. They're amazing. We can hold both. We can hold absolutely hold both. And if we're not afraid of the grief and the pain because we have adequate support, our children won't be afraid of it either. And they won't have to live in a place of denial or avoidance of those very real things that hurt.
That's very powerful. Talk a little bit more about that, about the tax of denial and avoidance.
All right. Well, I'm gonna take myself off of there. Yeah, you know what I've noticed for myself, and I'll speak from this today place of parenting an adolescent, and maybe some people will resonate with this, but it's so fantastic. And there is also this place of abandonment. I have given my life to this young human for this amount of time, and she doesn't want to hold my hand anymore. And she's going to start like going away. That really scares me. That makes me sad. And that makes me angry. And I mean, who wants to admit that? Has anyone seen the movie, the Pixar short called Bao? BAO? Yeah. Okay. People who have, I get chills because that is so, if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. I'm not going to, no spoiler here, but it really represents what happens when our child begins to crave autonomy. And our 3-year-olds crave autonomy, right? Our 9-year-olds crave autonomy. Our 15-year-olds crave autonomy. And what we do if we aren't processing it, couple of things. We hang on tighter. We got to hang on. No, you can't go here. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Why are you doing that? We become critical because we're trying to keep them safe and trying to keep them close. Or whatever, then I'll leave you before you can leave me. And we start like, I don't know what they're doing. And we start maybe pulling away some of our love and connection and warmth because it hurts. Or we go over the top. Oh, what are these cool things we can do? I can wow them into liking me again. We can go on this vacation. Maybe I'll buy them this. Maybe I'll do this. I'll be the really cool mom. I don't know. Maybe I'll get piercings and tattoos. Sorry, maybe you're knowing a little bit more about me. Maybe my 16-year-old, when she's 16, will like me if I've got a lot of tats. There's things that happen. And then they are picking up on that, right? Our young animals, they are smart. They know what's happening when we're hanging on strong. They feel us pushing away. We maybe start to get very critical of them because it's hard to recognize that they're moving away from us. To me, the talk about the sort of the double helix of my mission, my intention, I don't know, mission sounds really intense, but my intention, my deep belief is, how do we care for ourselves as mothers so that we can use this time with my child? I get to go back and heal what it was like for me when I was 14, 15. What was happening in my body? What was happening with my parents? What was happening sexually, physically, emotionally? What was happening for my mother at this time? Because essentially her mother is mothered me at that time based on my mother's experience of parenthood. If I can look at that stuff, I'm going to be able to be more there for her as she experiences the very real, difficult aspects of adolescence. And I can be there for her emotionally without my stuff having to be front and center.
I love those examples. And I think everybody on the phone can probably relate to that. And all those emotions you go through as a mother or parent. I again invite you to put comments or questions, especially if you're going through a specific stage of motherhood that you'd like Magdalena to address. What else would you like to share? What's on your heart, Magdalena?
Yeah, I had a mother that I worked with recently, she shared such a beautiful story, illustrating this even further. She has a 3-year-old who was starting school for the first time. And he also had never had a haircut. And he decided he was going to get a haircut and start school. Which she was so excited. She also happens to have a 9-month-old. So having her 3-year-old out of the house for the first time was a great gain for her, right? Oh my gosh, I don't have to take care of these 2 young little people. So she was very excited. And then she began to feel and taste the bittersweetness of this transition that was about to happen. Her little boy, her baby's hair being cut. Huge. I mean, again, the chills happen because we just go take them, they sit in a little, chair, whatever, the little airplane chair, and bzz, done. And we may have a moment, but the pause, the really like, this is a big deal. He got his hair cut. And then he was going to go to school, and she drove him to school. And when she drove out, she said, I thought about you and what you've been talking about. And I allowed myself to come home and cry. He's not my baby anymore the way he was. She said, because I could cry, like really just, and feel the grief. It feels like a death inside in some way. She said, because I could feel that, I felt like I put a container, like a fence around me, so that when I went to pick him up, it was all about him. And the next day when he said, oh, that boy was kind of mean, she said, I didn't have to be, like, well, do you not want to go to school anymore? Right? Like, don't you want to come and stay home? Because wouldn't that make me feel better if you didn't go to school anymore? I wouldn't have to deal with this loss. She could shepherd him through the feelings that he has and had about being treated unfairly without putting her own stuff on it. And to me, that was like, all right, so cool. And this is a 3-year-old. So what's it going to look like when he's 7? And what's it going to look like with her 9-month-old as her second, when she needs to wean that second child? I worked with a mother who was weaning her second child and was having so much difficulty with it because the child didn't want to stop nursing and she was done. But because of how she had weaned her first, she had so much guilt about it, so much weight. So she couldn't say no to this second one because there was all this other stuff in the room with her. And when we were able to process the grief that she had and move to this other place of really loving herself and compassion for herself at that time and loving her child, her first, kind of renegotiating that relationship, she was able with her second child to say, we're done. We're going to do this in a really beautiful way, but we're done. And she could do that without carrying all the stuff, the unresolved stuff.
Yes. And, what's interesting here is not everyone has to cry, right? Crying can be an outlet for somebody, doesn't need to be an outlet for everyone. But I think culturally, sometimes we don't want to give ourselves permission for that moment of wailing. And I also thought of you. Isn't it great how people think of you during these moments when, before my youngest was leaving for college on the other coast, far away, I was just sobbing all the time. And at one point, my husband said to me, I don't think I've ever heard that sound come out of a human before. And that's when I thought of you, because you had told me a story about ceremony. And I think it's important. Please share that story.
Yeah. I had the great honor of watching a documentary years ago about an Aboriginal tribe in Australia, and they have a rites of passage for manhood for their young men, and the women are in charge of the children up until the age of this initiation, and on the day of the initiation, which will mark their beginning of manhood, because then the boys move to being sort of the responsibility of the men of the village. And the women can no longer tell them what to do. They don't even stay in the same home, I think, anymore. And on that day, the mothers were all of the boys were all like crouched in kind of like in the bushes. And they even had like a blanket over them. And as the boys walked by, each of them would take the blanket off and wail, just full-bodied crying and sobbing because they were losing their sons. And the sons would walk by and feel their mother's love, feel their mother's labor for all of those years, both physical and metaphorical, and know that they were loved. But the sons didn't have to take care of their mothers, because there was the mothers who had recently, their children had transitioned, could absorb them in, and the grandmothers could absorb them in, and the son could move on to go do what he needed to do. So that to me is what we are looking for. And you know, in this day and age, so many of us may no longer have the strong traditions of a church. Maybe there's not that strong connection. We've lost some of our the ancestral wisdom, indigenous ways. And there's also this idea that those kinds of loud beating of chests and wailing is just not appropriate. So to be able to have an opportunity to embody grief and then have an opportunity to be held in it, that's what I'd love for mothers to have.
Oh, that's so beautiful. We have some questions in the chat that I want to make sure we address. I'm not sure if you can see it or if you want to read it. So let's talk about Susan's first, and then we'll go to Seta.
Great. So I see one daughter just left for freshman year in college last month. One 15-year-old daughter still at home. Big transition for me right now as a mom, and for the entire family that I feel will go on for the next few years. So beautiful to recognize, Susan, that this is going to take time. It is a longer transition, and that the bittersweetness of the moving her out, going and doing this thing, and the march to the end, while also the loss, and then your own identity, right? Like who are you without these girls around? Who are we? Which coincides with sort of menopause as we get into that, right? Like what the heck? What is this? What is this? What is this body for anymore? Okay, so that's another talk we can have as I contemplate that. What makes me think, Susan, is that a great friend of mine, her daughter was getting ready to go to college, and she found herself sobbing every day in the car, and this sadness was coming up. And what I would most like, even if none of us get anywhere past this first point, it's just awareness. This is here. Grief is here. Transition is here, and it's announcing itself. Can I acknowledge it and give it some time? How we give it time, we can talk about, and there's lots of different tools and modalities. But the first is, what's happening? Something's happening here. What my friend decided she wanted to do is she wanted to do a leaving ceremony with her family. And so we gathered her and her husband, and not to forget the daughter, that just like you, there was a daughter who was going to be staying at home, who was also going to be left. She needed an opportunity to process no longer having a big sister as a buffer between her and her parents, right? No longer having the person she could go to and look up to right in the same home. And so we gathered and we told the story of this young one. Oh, get a little emotional, right? Because 18 years later, this mother needed to tell the birth story of this child and feel the grief and the loss. And then what we got to do is really talk about I do this because it was sort of this alchemy, this like, whoa, look at all of the things that this child has become as a result of mom, as a result of dad, as a result of baby sister. Look at who she is now. And the thing that the mom was so afraid of, which maybe you might resonate with, is what's going to happen to her? She might not be safe out in the world. And so the superpowers, the super ability, the super protective factor, we got to build in this ceremony. And everyone got to talk about how much they love this girl. And she got to talk about how much she loves them. And she got to talk about what she's afraid of too. And then they all put together care packages that had deep meaning. Like, this is the favorite Pocky that we always used to eat, and this is the popcorn. And they almost blessed these items in this group so that when the daughter would receive them, it would have the essence of that love and care. And she made one for them too. She made one for the little sister, that it would come. As we talk about, I'll use the word die, but it is. We don't die once. We die many times. And in the dying, we get deeper and deeper and deeper into the possibilities of feeling this celebration and gratitude and praise in ways that we weren't able to before. So in several months, when that young sister got that care package from her older sister, it had an acute pain, but then the flood, the remembrance of gratitude and love and connection could fill all those spaces.
Oh, that's a wonderful visual. I think we have time for one more question. We have about 7 minutes left here. Time always goes so fast. So, this leads into the question about ancestors, especially if there's been either past trauma or an unsupportive past. I'll let you maybe just read quietly the question and then respond with your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just breathing in the idea that sitting right now around each of us are the shadows of our unresolved ancestors' experiences and how they live in us today, in our bodies, in our bones, in our fascia. It causes us to say things we wouldn't even normally say. Where'd that come from? Ceremony, ritual is really big for me because it is a creative container for being able to talk about, reference, work with these memories, which may or may not even, we might not even have tangible memories. I don't have a tangible memory of the sign on my bassinet saying, "Don't pick me up." I have my mother's memory. And I'm actually thinking about throwing her a baby shower. She also never had a baby shower. So what is it that we can do today to honor the darkness and the light? And I think that this is where things like dance, actually next Saturday, if any of you are interested, I'll be having a dance and rite ceremony journey in honor of ancestors, where we can let our bodies do some of the moving out and the metabolizing of our experiences that are within us. They may or may not have words. I think things like journaling, dream tending, it's a newer element to me, but being able to really listen to how our unconscious, our subconscious is speaking to us and trying to work through these heavy pieces from our intergenerational experiences, to me is very, very powerful. And I've been doing a lot of work with birth story medicine, where women get to go back and talk about their experience, their difficult experiences in pregnancy or childbirth or the postpartum period, and mine the pain and the celebration within there to see if there's any of that previous stuff that they're carrying from their origin stories. See if there's any of that that can be resolved and worked through.
And Magdalena, I think too, maybe just for 1 minute, talk about how celebration doesn't have to look the same. It doesn't have to look like a party or a shower, right? It could be a ritual that is lighting a candle or taking a hike or other things. Can you give a couple examples of what ritual can look like that might not be something we normally think about?
Yeah. Ceremony. One idea is a family, their child was going off to kindergarten and they were having lots of feelings about it. They were very excited. So we actually got her backpack, her new backpack, her new shoes. We got the letter that the teacher sent, and we just sat around and blessed these items. Again, these are not religious people. I'm not religious. I was raised in the church, but I'm not currently practicing. But this feeling of intentional words being offered to these objects that would then be, the child would never know. And they didn't say, we blessed your backpack with lots of warm wishes, and the letter that your teacher sent, we sent her lots of strength and love for working in a system that sometimes doesn't always respect teachers. We didn't ever have to tell the child that. But every time that in the morning, the parents would put that backpack on their child, it was a talisman. It was an object that reminded them that they could feel safe, that they were sending their child off into the world, that they were feeling, that they could feel that they were being protective in a very deep, subtle way.
Yeah. And also one other comment was about how much children are carrying right now with grief and loss as it relates to experiences, as it relates to fear that their parents might be carrying due to the pandemic. How can I, ensure safety? How can I ensure academic success? How can I ensure whatever those worries we're carrying for our children versus the hopes, right? We've kind of been grounded in this container of confusion and worry related to the pandemic. And certainly there's a lot of mental health issues, a lot of behavioral issues, even a lot of, challenges and for teachers in today's classroom. So do you have suggestions as we close, maybe last thoughts related to how to help children with the transition that they're facing right now?
Yeah, I think it again starts with us as the parents. We have to kind of clear our own gunk regularly, so that we can be there for them, because they are going to have, even non-pandemic time, there are big emotions, there are big sadnesses, there are big griefs and angers that our children feel. And we can learn from them, because especially from our 3-year-old little ones, when big feeling comes, they move it out quick, right? They're loud, they're noisy, they're heated. If only we could do the same. So if we can take care of our stuff, and have someone listen to us, then we can be there and take note that when our children's behavior begins to go off track, because I love the ceremony stuff and the grief and the trauma. And I also support parents in parenting strategies around some of this, but we can have our ear tuned that when they're unreasonable, they may be working through stuff. And we don't even need to know what that is. It's not about the blue cup or the second cookie. It may be about something deeper. And if we can be present for those feelings, because we've taken care of our own by having someone listen to them, we're going to help them process it and move through that even quicker.
That's wonderful. Magdalena, our time has come to an end. I want to share some upcoming highlights for Rev 11, but before doing that, we'll send some information about where people can find you, but is there anything else you'd like to highlight about you or the services you offer?
Yeah. Um, I'm excited to be present with all of you today. Thank you for coming and listening, and the people who will listen later. If you're feeling like you need more support or additional support with navigating the transition in your children's lives, I'm here for lots of different things: birth story listening sessions, parenting support, ceremony and grief transitioning ceremonies, and processing. And what I would offer, just as you head out, oh, and these dance parties, yes, Saturdays once a month, dance, come and dance and move it through. What I would offer you is that if anything resonated for you today, share it with someone. We are social creatures, and as women, we know the power of being in community. Share it with someone so they can help you hold it and remind you of the power of slowing down and listening and being willing to celebrate fully and grieve fiercely. Or I think it goes the other way around. But anyways, you know what I mean.
We don't know what we do know what you mean, and thank you. And I think what you say about community is so true, which is why I love Revel 11. And here is Joni, one of the co-founders of Revel 11, to tell us what's next.
Well, first of all, I want to thank both of you so much for just a beautiful conversation. And I have to say, Magdalena, that you have given me insight into my mom's journey. While I have not had children of my own, I have certainly had great insight today about her being a single mom and the journey that she took in her lifetime. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you, Monica, for just a beautiful conversation, like I said, and you're just such a wonderful interviewer. Thank you. We really are grateful for you.
Oh, I'm grateful for you too.